Welcome to Furious Driving, and today I'm in the thinking man's alternative to the E46 BMW 3 Series. Yes, this is an Audi A4 B7, and it's the 2-litre turbo diesel S-Line, which means it's got loads of economy and a few toys. Now, if you like reviews of interesting, unusual, different cars, then please make sure you hit the like and indeed subscribe buttons right this very second. And now, on with the review. Welcome to Furious Driving, and today we're going back to the middle of the early noughties when Audi was not yet a byword for people flashing their lights in the outside lane 3 inches from your back bumper. They were taking the place then of Volvo, as they had done in kind of the 90s, producing an alternative to BMW and Mercedes with a discreet, well-engineered vehicle. And today we're out in a 2007 A4 Avant 2-litre turbo diesel, a B7. And the B7 is interesting because essentially it's a B6 which was released in the year 2000. In 2004 they gave it an extensive makeover, so extensive in fact they gave it an entirely new model designation, the B7, and they used that until 2008. And this is the B7, which is essentially the B6 but with interesting new clothes. The headlamps have been restyled and given a bit more dynamism, a bit more shape and a bit more contour, a bit more style. The grille has taken the new family look of the A6, becoming much deeper, actually copying the Rover P5 of the 1960s and 70s, some did say at the time. It does look more aggressive, more imposing. This is where the cars became a little bit more aggressive in their styling. Now this car is an S-Line, a model designation which carried over from the previous generation, which is the slightly sportier one with a stiffer suspension and a few other niceties around the car. Now the B7 was available in 3 body styles: the saloon, the convertible, and here the estate, or Avant as Audi will have you call it. This is possibly the most well known, but it's definitely the most practical of all the options, with a big family hauling boot around the back. Now the boot on this thing is more than generous. It's 442 litres with the seats up, 1184 with the seats folded down, and it goes back a really long way. So you can put a lot of stuff in here. And there's lots of extra practicality in here. We've got little discreet side pockets so you can tuck away your fire extinguisher, first aid kit, or hide any odds and sods you don't want prying eyes to see. You've got little nets down here. You've got very solid lash down hooks. Under the floor we have got space for a space saver spare wheel, which is a very good thing. There's even a 12-volt socket down the side just here. And if you're a fan of a load space cover, not only does it have a load space cover, this includes a dog guard / load guard which hooks into the ceiling to protect you from your luggage, and the seats fold forward, giving you a ton more space, which we've already mentioned. Now, being a modern diesel, there's not a lot to look at underneath the bonnet, just a big sheet of plastic, so not really much to catch your attention, but there are a vast number of choices. Your engine choices were manifold. You see what I did there? Everything from a 1.6 petrol making 101 horsepower through a 1.8 turbo, 1.8 turbo quattro, 2-litre TFSI, 2-litre TFSI quattro, 2-litre TFSI DTM, 2-litre TFSI DTM quattro, 3.2 V6 FSI, 3.2 V6 FSI quattro, a 4.2 V8 S4 BBK, and the 4.2 V8 RS4, making 414. Then you get the diesels, which is where we are with this thing. The 1.9 TDI was the entry level with 113 horsepower. Then there was a 2-litre TDI making 138. 2-litre TDI 138 also. 2-litre TDI making 168. 2-litre TDI Quattro making 168. A 2.5-litre V6 TDI making 161 but more torque. A 2.7-litre TDI making 178. And then finally there was a 3-litre V6 TDI Quattro making either 201 or 230 horsepower. That's quite a lot really. This though is a 2-litre TDI. Which means it has a 0 to 60 of about 9 seconds and a top speed of about 130. But the headline figure really here is the economy, as it'll do about 50 miles to the gallon, and that's why most people bought them. Now, Audi really have always pulled it out of the bag when it comes to interiors. They've done very special things, and back with this model they didn't really change much from the B6. They kept the interior very much the same apart from the infotainment, sat-nav kind of stuff. So let's start over with the doors, where we've got very solid feeling everything. Really solid chunky door grips, good quality plastics, nice bit of metal for the door handle, a textured metal, bit of detailing, and a nice bit of fabric in between the harder plastics, top and bottom. Not very big door bin. We do have Bose speakers mid-range there and a tweeter just there. The seats, low cloth on this model, not a leather upgrade. It does have height adjustment, electric lumbery stuff, which is always very confusing. Never really know what that does. Manual everything else. Climb aboard, and we have got, let's shut the door because it's really cold outside today, 7 degrees apparently. Inside everything is very dark and very black, with only a little bit of this aluminium textured metal to liven things up around the car. This carries on quite neatly from the door, flows into the dashboard and carries on the full width, and it's also repeated down here by the gear shift. Starting at the top, we have got an epic T-shelf area, huge flat space, so not really tall enough for a big cup. You need a proper cup and saucer, espresso cup maybe, because if you're an Audi, you're probably in a hurry. So espresso cups and things will fit there. Light snacks also, lots of room for many, many tasty treats up here on the dashboard, but nothing to stop any spillages flowing onto your knees, so lose points for that. Our vents are located up here in this large black dash top area, and so is the passenger airbag. Flows into this curvy little hummock, which hides our dials. A simple but very effective dashboard arrangement. We've got just basic black with little bits of aluminium-y silver trim separating out the temperature, rev counter, the diesel, so only revving up to 4,500 RPM, the little LCD screen in the centre, the speedo going up to 160, although that's 30 miles more than it can do, and the fuel gauge, thanks to Chris for leaving it full. We do have a couple of extra little buttons down here rather than just a single thing for resetting the trip. Got our mode and check engine type stuff, as well as resetting the trip. Down here we do have what is basically a Volkswagen Group parts bin switch for the headlights, which do have an auto function on them. We've got our wipers on the right, which are again Volkswagen parts bin, and indicators on the left. But the steering wheel though is very, very special indeed. It's a lovely perforated leather item with interestingly sculptured shapes to give you a nice grip and feel, and smooth leather top and bottom. It is multifunction for your radio and various other bits and bobs, and we have the horn in the centre. Horn test. Oh, Teutonic parp. Moving down into the middle, this is the major difference between this and the B6, is the radio. It's a slightly confusing affair because you've got this great big knob just here, which looks like it's going to be for volume. You run to grab that when the radio is too loud, or you want to turn your favourite song up, but no, you just change the radio station with that. It's slightly confusing, but the actual volume control itself is this little tiny dial down here. Who knew? Above the radio we do have our one and only cup holder. We Germans do like an intricate cup holder, and they did seem to go through a phase of loving sticking it above the radio and in front of the air vents. The E60 BMW did exactly the same thing. So your cup of coffee is tottering around dangerously above your radio and your gear shift and blocking the airflow to your passenger. It's a good way of cooling your coffee down though. If it's too hot, you turn the air vent on full cold. Hazard lights, 3 blanking switches, so you know you could have had other things. ESP on and off. And underneath that we've got our dual zone climate, which is pretty cool. This red LCD with many buttons does look a little bit dated, but it is very effective and very easy to use for both you and your passenger. Ahead of that we've got massive ashtray, and most importantly and most wonderful, 6-speed manual gearbox. There were 3 gearbox choices here. The manual, which is the best one, 6-speed. There was a CVT with 7 programmed change points in it, or if you went for the Quattro and wanted an automatic, you could have a jet drag 6-speed real automatic. Leather-clad proper handbrake and an armrest, which is honestly very much in the way, so we'll move that out of the way because it can't be doing with that. And there are a pair of little cubby holes down here by the handbrake, just ideal for putting stuff in. Now in the back we've got a lot of room. It's a not massive car, but it's fairly sizable, so we've got good space. We've got another Bose speaker in there, electric window, more metal bits, and a tweeter as well for the rear passenger. Climbing in is very easy because being the estate we have got nice easy access. We've got armrests, coat hooks, we've got a metal topped ashtray, but no power socket and no seat back storage, interestingly, just a plastic hard thing. The seats are very upright indeed, they're quite soft, same fabric as the front, and we do have individual reading lights for the back as well. And of course we have an armrest with storage. How good is that? So first off, I have moved the armrest that way because I cannot get the handbrake up and down with that in place. Apparently everything's okay. Now this car does currently have 175,700 miles on it, which is quite a few. And it does go to show how reliable these cars are. And as another example of that, the Swedish equivalent of their MOT system declared it to be the most reliable car in the country, because at 3 years old they were having 0% fail rates of these cars, and it was the most reliable car in Sweden, which is interesting. Now, although the B7 was very, very similar underneath to the B6, they did make some changes to the steering to sharpen things up a bit. Oh my god, there's a flood. They did make a few changes under the skin, including the steering to sharpen up the response and handling just a little bit. And while it is better than the B6, it's still not as lively and awake in your hands as a BMW of the same era. So the steering, oh, Ferrari. So the steering is quite light, but not loaded with feedback. And of course the car is front wheel drive, which is not the spirited driver's first choice, unlike the BMW and perhaps even the Mercedes rivals. That's not to say it's a bad car in any way at all. Probably more sure-footed, probably more safe as well, especially if you go for the Quattro versions, which are available in pretty much every version of the car, regardless of body style or engine choice. The brakes are strong and give you a good sense of confidence about the car. The ride is okay, it's fairly firm, and so it can be a bit jittery on less than perfect roads, but overall it's not terrible. Now, this car has the manual 6-speed gearbox, which is absolutely a good thing. Admittedly, after 175,000 miles, it is a little bit notchy, but it's a lovely light throw and it does drop in quite well. But it is a lovely light throw and it drops into gear quite pleasantly, actually. There are two other gearbox options, which are both automatics. The cooking models, well, everything apart from the RS, came with a CVT gearbox with 7 programmed gears. If you went for the RS though, that didn't come with that. That came with a Jetrag 6-speed traditional automatic. But for my money, the manual's the way to go. This may not have the dynamic supremacy of the BMW of the era. Being slightly nose heavy and front wheel drive, it will have a tendency to understeer a bit and not feel quite so engaging through the corners, but the interior is incredibly well screwed together. This car's, well, as I say, 175,000 miles and not a squeak or rattle to be heard. Everything feels as solid as the day it rolled out of Ingolstadt, or wherever they built this one. And the materials do feel really good indeed. The only sign of wear really is the shiny gear shift. With its mixture of Volkswagen parts bin and its own custom-made controls, everything is very well laid out and easy to find. Everything's in nice, easy reach of the steering wheel. Although if you were spending an awful lot of money on an RS, you might be a little bit upset to have Polo switchgear in there. Although, as one Bentley executive is rumoured to have once said, when confronted with the question that their very, very expensive car had switchgear from something as mundane as a Ford, the simple reply was, our customers have never been in a Ford, they won't know. Which is probably a fair point. The 4-cylinder diesel is fairly quiet, it's quite refined. It sounds like a 4-cylinder diesel, to be perfectly honest, so not particularly exciting to listen to, but lots of torque and very good economy. This car actually belongs to Chris Smith, the mobile mechanic I've used a couple of times on the channel, and he's kind of got it for sale if anyone's interested. It is £2,500. Drop me a message in the links below and I can put you in touch. If it was ULEZ compatible and had heated seats, I'd be making him an offer for it right now. It does have some quite fancy advanced features for the time. For example, the nav repeats in the LCD display in the instrument binnacle. I've not got a destination programmed right now, but it's telling me I'm going north and what road I'm on. The A-pillars are pretty chunky and it does have that slightly low feeling of the ceiling around the front of the screen, which some saloons do seem to have. However, it does feel pretty open and airy, and visibility is pretty good too. Now, there is an interesting footnote to the story of the B7, because when production finished in 2008, the entire production line was shipped down to Martorell in Spain, just outside Barcelona, where SEAT reskinned it, rebadged it, where SEAT redesigned a few key parts of it, rebadged it, and it became the XAO for the next few years. So you could have a previous generation Audi for a knockdown price with a Spanish badge on it, and it was apparently a very good car indeed. So, the Audi A4 B7 2-litre diesel. Okay, it's not the most exciting thing in the world to drive, but it's a very nice place to be, and it seems to be astonishingly reliable. It does sound a little bit like I'm describing my C-Class, but at least it's got a manual gearbox in this one. Anyway, if you've enjoyed this review, please, as always, hit like and definitely hit subscribe, and join me again next time driving something completely different. You know, I just spent £10 going through a hand car wash. That was not worth it.